1.
Once upon a time, there was a cat and a dog.
2.
A man walked into a bar with a lion.
3.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
4.
It was love at first sight.
5.
It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. 1.
He's in no condition to drive.
2.
He's stopped by the police.
3.
Someone is robbing a bank in the next street.
4.
The man can't believe his luck.
5.
He goes downstairs and sees the police there.
Urban legends. People have always loved telling stories. In the past, before television, on cold, dark winter nights, parents would tell their children stories that they had learned from their parents. In fact, storytelling used to be a central part of everyday life. Every evening, families would sit together around the fire and would tell wonderful tales of magic, mystery, and terror. Today, it's still true that everyone loves a good story, but the type of story we enjoy is constantly changing. For example, the last 30 or 40 years have seen the emergence of a phenomenon called urban legends. These are funny, strange, or even frightening stories which often contain a warning for the listener. Children who died because they ate poisoned Halloween sweets, or drivers who were murdered because a serial killer hid in their car when they stopped to buy petrol. Usually these urban legends are false, but many people who hear them at first actually believe them. People who tell these stories often claim that they happened to a friend of a friend. Here is an example of one. Do you think it's true? A guy at work told me this story, which supposedly happened to a friend of his. Anyway, this friend is at a party and he's drunk too much. When the party comes to an end, everyone tells him that he's in no condition to drive, but he insists on taking his car. Well, he's driving along the road, badly, when suddenly he's stopped by the police. The officer tells him to get out of the car, but then the officer receives an urgent radio message. Someone is robbing a bank in the next street. "Don't go away, I'll be back," says the officer before he runs quickly to the scene of the crime. The drunk man can't believe his luck, so he gets in the car and drives away. When he gets home, he parks the car in his garage and immediately goes to bed. It's been a long day and he's very tired and very drunk. Then, a few hours later, someone starts knocking loudly at his front door. So the man goes downstairs, opens the door, and sees the police there. "Where's your car?" they say. He tells them indignantly that it's in his garage, but when he opens the door, he can't believe his eyes. There is a car there, but it's not his. It's a police car, and the lights are still flashing.
Once upon a time, there was a prince who wanted to marry a princess. He travelled all over the world to find one. However, he couldn't find a real princess, so he finally came back to his castle. One evening, a terrible storm came. Suddenly, someone knocked at the door of the castle. It was a beautiful girl, and she was completely wet. She said that she was a princess. Now the king and the queen didn't believe her, so they decided to test the girl. The old queen put a pea on a bed, and then she covered it with lots of sheets and blankets. Then the girl went to sleep. In the morning, they asked her how she had slept. "Oh, very badly," she said. "I was lying on something very hard all night and couldn't sleep at all." As soon as she said this, the king and queen knew that she was a real princess, because only a real princess could be so sensitive. The next day, the prince and the princess got married, and they lived happily ever after. The moral of the story is, if you stop looking for something, You'll find it in the end.
1,
Vegetable.
2,
Secretary.
3,
Chocolate.
4,
Comfortable.
5,
Medicine.
6,
Secondary.
7,
Aspirin.
8,
Biscuit.
9,
Library.
1,
Loved.
2,
Every.
3,
Liked.
4,
Killed.
5,
Favourite.
6,
Everyone.
7,
Desperately.
8,
Murdered.
9.
Build.
A tragic mistake.
Every country has its own traditional stories. One of the best-known folk tales in Wales is a story about a brave and loyal dog. A very long time ago, there was a prince called Llewellyn the Great. The prince loved to go hunting, and over the years he had killed all kinds of animals. When he went hunting, his dogs always went with him. He had dozens of them, but there was only one that he really loved, Galette. One day, as he was getting ready to go hunting, the prince called his dogs. Strangely, Galette didn't appear. After he had returned from the hunt, the prince immediately saw Galette. It was a terrible sight. The dog had blood on his mouth, and he was breathing heavily. The prince was horrified and thought, "Where is my young son?" He ran quickly into his son's bedroom. He desperately looked for the child, but there was no sign of him. Llewellyn imagined the worst. Apparently, his favourite dog had murdered his son. So the prince angrily took his sword and killed Galette. However, as he was looking at the dead dog, he suddenly heard a baby crying. The sound was coming from under the bed. He looked and saw that his son was alive and well. And next to the child was a dead wolf, which Galette had killed in order to protect him. Llewellyn then realized that he had made a tragic mistake. He sadly carried the body of his faithful dog outside the walls of the castle and buried him. He put a stone there to mark the place, so no one would forget Galette. Today there is a village in Wales called Galette, which means the Tomb of Galette in Welsh. Every year, thousands of tourists go there to remember the brave dog that died tragically, saving the prince's son.
High above the city on a tall column stood the statue of the Happy Prince. One night a little bird was flying over the city. He saw the statue and said, "I will stop there tonight. It is a fine position." He was preparing to go to sleep when a large drop of water fell on him. "How strange!" he exclaimed. "There is not a cloud in the sky." Then another drop fell. After that he looked up. The Happy Prince was crying. "Who are you?" the bird said. "I am the Happy Prince," answered the statue. "Why are you crying then?" asked the bird. "When I was alive and had a human heart," answered the statue, "I lived in a beautiful palace and didn't see the bad things in the world. Everyone called me the Happy Prince. But now that I am dead, I can see all the ugliness and sadness in my city, and I want to cry."
Professor Lomax, you have just written a book called Exaggeration. Could you tell us what it's about?
Well, the basic idea of the book is that we all like to talk about our experiences, but we have a tendency to exaggerate. We always try to make them seem more interesting.
Could you give us an example of this?
Of course. Imagine that you've just been on holiday. It was an okay holiday, but nothing special. A friend phones you up and asks you about it. If you're like most people, you'll probably say that you had a great time, even though it's not really true.
So you think most of us do this, that we exaggerate?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Well, as I said before, we like to make our experiences appear more interesting than they really were. And we all like telling stories. If you say something was okay, people probably won't want to hear much more about it. But if you say that it was fantastic, then you can be sure of the other person's attention.
So basically you're saying that we're all liars.
I wouldn't say that, but we all like to decorate the truth. It's a bit like when we eat. Don't you put olive oil and vinegar on a salad to make it more interesting and tasty? Sean.
I used to love the summer holidays. We would go to visit my family in Ireland. They had a big farm, and we used to do really cool things like milk the cows or make butter. Most of all, we would run around the fields and play. It was fantastic.
Margaret.
We used to always go to the same place every year. It's called Little Hampton, and it's on the south coast of England. We would spend a lot of time on the beach, and I used to make sand castles.
Dan.
My family didn't used to have much money when I was young, so I would stay at home. That was okay, though, as I used to go to the park and play football with my friends. And sometimes I would go fishing with my dad.